sharing what they know to be true. I love the Trust newspaper. A lot of people who are bringing their good news about what's happening in their world and how they're solving problems, to share those ideas with other people. It happens in a beautiful place with on the waterfront in San Francisco. If you do plan to come, don't think that means it's warm. It's cold for us. It's what temperature is 55?
65 or so.
65. That's cold for us. 65 Fahrenheit. I have no idea what that is in centigrade. But bring a jacket. You're not going to sunny Southern California. But this gathering has 3,000 people talking about.
From 70 countries.
You'll have your time in a minute. We're married, so it's okay. From 70 countries. But these folks are talking about social capital and capital markets and funding on a global scale. We started this year another program that I think the slides for it have already gone by, called Neighborhood Economics, and it happened the day before SoCap, and we hope that it will happen the day before SoCap again next year, talking about exactly what you're doing in Walleran, where what can you do in a local community to make that social capital move around your neighborhood and keep your dollars at home? How do you keep your money sleeping in the same town you sleep in and not keep buying things on a multinational companies? So how do we make what happens at SoCap happen very, very locally? We have more than 300 speakers, about 150 panels, talking about everything from how to keep your impact at home, how to go to the next generation, how to create social impact bonds, things that are very, what I would call nerdy and down in the trenches. But we also have programming, because we call ourselves the intersection of money and meaning. We also have programming about why do we do this? What's the big why for you? And how do you make decisions to invest your money in a different way or to spend your money in a different way? And we've had things about how to incorporate your dreams into your future, literally your dreams, as in dreaming while you're asleep, to how does your faith inform the decisions you make about how you spend money, or what's the spiritual dimension of investing? Very, very different ways to think about it. We have a lot of fun. Last night we were talking with Peter. He's been there, and he said it was just like a party going on all the time. And our 10th anniversary is this coming year. It'll be our 10th SoCap, and we're planning to make it even more fun and even more exciting. And Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you now, and you can talk about the flying monkeys.
There you go.
Thank you. So we did create this new thing. It was heretical when it started. It was social capital meeting capital markets, and it offended the true believers on both sides, which was our intent. And we wanted to say that you can invest in all of us as well as yourself. The dominant paradigm of investing was I invest for myself and I give for good, which was something we inherited from the robber barons who tried to make the market a force of nature, etc. Terrible things. We're trying to deconstruct that myth. And it's worked, but we realized about 4 years ago, I didn't realize, somebody pointed it out to me, that we had more Africans and scholarship. We scholarship about 150 entrepreneurs, and we had more Africans at SoCap than we did African Americans. And then impact investors in the US were more ready to invest in Africa than they were with African Americans. So we looked at what that is about, and the same thing was also true of Hispanic people in the US, that they were much more interested in Africa, India, those kinds of things. And so we've got a new product that it's being led by African Americans. It's called the Runway Project. And so the idea is it's not a pilot problem, it's a runway problem. And the critical inflection point for our intervention was friends and family capital. About 30% of the businesses in the US, including 30% of venture-backed startups, start from friends and family. But African Americans have $11,000 in average assets, whereas white folks have about $144,000. Our Census Bureau says you need $20,000 to launch. If mom and them have 11, you're not going to get there. So much talent doesn't get into the field. The second thing is people from marginalized communities don't get hired. I appreciate the welcoming thing, but in general, they don't get hired. They don't get seen. There's all different kinds of biases, but that entrepreneurship has been proven to be the path to wealth, community wealth, for marginalized people. It's not alleviating poverty, it's creating wealth in marginalized communities. And so we're working with people around that. We have a thing that basically is a financial vehicle that solves the problem of not having a rich uncle. Friends and family means you can go to an uncle, you can go to a member of your alumni network, a club, or whatever. And this is a democratic funding vehicle. In the US, it's a certificate of deposit. It's a government secured product that performs above the market rate. So you make more money and do good, or you can be with Wells Fargo or Citi and you make less money and not do good. So that's your first choice. And we're investing in these entrepreneurs, going past mentorship to add capital. So you need the folks who have done the really good mentorship to help working with marginalized communities, like immigrants here would be the same analogy, to help them create businesses. But then we find capital that reaches down into them. To get a little technical, it acts like equity for a couple of years. You just pay the interest, and then it becomes a real note afterwards, done by a large credit union with a 100% reserve against the losses. So it's a 100% loan loss reserve. So it means that the capital from the investors who are putting in $500, they're making more money investing in wealth in people in their community that they think of as needy and dependent, and they're actually investing in startups. And so you need somebody who's worked well with those startups. And we're launching in 8 cities where we have those groups who have worked well with those startups in Cincinnati, in Oakland, California, in Washington, D.C., in Baltimore, in Houston, and in Durham and Charlotte. And so we have, it's a multi-part thing. You just can't apply the capital if you don't have people who already know how to bring those people up to have viable businesses. But it's in the US, at least, the data is really clear that there's a 14x gap between white folks and black folks on wealth. If they start a business, the gap shrinks by more than 75% to 3x. So it's a huge wealth creator. You don't give them a job, you help them create a business. And then they store the wealth in the business. But we're also telling a new story in those places. So imagine it's in Gothenburg, let's just say that. And you're investing in entrepreneurs in Barahone. You don't think of Barahone as anything but where dependent Somalis are, Gambians, whatever you think of. But you're actually, we would bring them in the U.S. We're planning to bring those entrepreneurs out to where white folks gather to talk about issues and put their money forward. So in churches, in civic clubs, we've done a thing in Mississippi where you also added into professional partnerships. So law firms get involved, or accounting firms get involved, and you have this new story. You're investing in Entrepreneur John, and you're investing along with them because they're also investing in that certificate of deposit. So we've got 8 cities, and there is, strangely enough, 0 data about how friends and family scale entrepreneurs work, because in the US and in affluent countries, your investment committee shows up at Christmas or at family holidays, and the penalty is your uncle looks down on you. You lose your social capital. So there's no data, because in affluent communities, it's a social thing. We're turning that into an asset class. So we're doing the first primary level of research around our pilots to see what the losses really should be like. And we're talking to people in Sweden about, could possibly people in Sweden be part of that learning community? We're working with banks, CDFIs, foundations around the loan loss reserve. And could this model be applied in Sweden? That's one of the things we're here talking to partners about here and in Malmö. But it's a really odd thing that it's one of the gaps that affluent people don't look at. When you think of friends and family, you access your network. These people have a network, but their network doesn't have money. So we're creating a virtual rich uncle for entrepreneurs in marginalized communities who don't have a rich uncle. But you can invest in them at 0 risk through the kind of little trick that we have of the loan loss reserve. And that's the path to wealth for marginalized communities, is creating their own businesses, because they don't know the social things to do to get hired. The fellow with Just Welcome was great, and you get little bitty jobs. You don't get hired for real jobs. But the history in the U.S. has shown we've had marginalized communities in a big scale, longer than you have. So we have more experience with this problem, and entrepreneurship is the path to wealth for marginalized communities. So we're looking to see if we can expand into a learning network with some of the Swedes around this concept. Thank you.
Yeah, now we'll take some questions.
Yeah, anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Did some of it make sense? Did all of it make sense?
Can you explain this no risk? It sounds
Yeah,
a little,
well, so it's no risk because you have 100% loan loss reserve against. So if you're investing, so if you're investing, let's say $10,000, an average loan is $10,000. You have $10,000 in that you raise from philanthropy as a loan loss reserve. That's the.
Oh yeah, okay. So it's back.
Yeah, and you know, there over time we will not need 100% loan loss reserve, but we don't know what the loss curve is. It means we don't know what the failure rate is because nobody's ever researched this level of below. This goes below a business loan. Technically, it's a personal loan for a business purpose that acts like equity for 2 years.
So your kind of role is to find the best projects.
Well, no. Actually, we have found folks who know the best projects first, right? So we have found a dozen cities who have these kinds of entrepreneurs but don't have this kind of capital. And we talked to all of those folks, and they said this is the nature of the capital that they don't have. They can't take a business loan and start paying it back. They need a couple years to get up and running. It can be, a lot of these things arise out of the kitchen or the bedroom. It could be some food and a catering or a special product, and what they need is money to open a kiosk in a mall where they're not ready for distribution, but they're ready for point of sale in high traffic areas. Sometimes it can be a commercial oven, but not a full stove, that kind of thing. Yeah. So we're not looking for, we're finding people who already have these entrepreneurs, and they all identify the same capital gap. There were mission-focused lenders who did business loans, but these folks don't have the track record to have a business loan. They don't have a track record of payables, receivables, cash flow projections, and so, which is not where friends and family goes. It's where the creative part of the economy. You know, Facebook, Google, Apple would not exist without friends and family. These are people who might do that, but they don't have access to friends and family.
So do the entrepreneur pay an interest rate on
Yeah, the entrepreneur pays, what they do is for the first 2 years they just pay interest on a $10,000 loan, and then the loan, once they get up, there's a balloon payment and it becomes a traditional loan. But it acts like equity to get your feet on the ground, but it's a real obligation. And you have to really have the wraparound services to make sure that you're lending to the right people. And we don't find those people, we find the people who know those people. Any other questions? Yes?
Say more about the partnership with the entrepreneur cohorts.
Well, you know,
You're just saying we know those people, but how would we be sourcing through people like Ronnie?
Yeah. So Ronnie Kroger is a great example. She runs the Optima Business Boot Camp out of Impact Hub Oakland. And so there's two parts to that. Impact Hub Oakland, it's like co-working spaces, but they're really community quarterbacks. They're ambassadors and code shifters. They can talk to housing companies, they can talk to foundations, they can talk to cities, and they can talk to entrepreneurs. And they bring all the multiple stakeholders together and bring on the mentors and things like that. And then Ronnie Kroger at Optima really sweats the details of the entrepreneurs. Same with Derek Brazil at Mortar in Cincinnati, the same with Jason Towns. So you have two levers. One works with all the broad stakeholder groups to get people engaged, and one works deeply with the entrepreneurs and you know, is kind of a mother hen. It's an ambassador and a mother hen are what you really need to make it work. Any other questions? Yes?
I was just thinking about in the before, how is in the policy making, and how is in the schools, how is the environment for the schools in order to like about entrepreneurship in the pupils? Is it something that is working in San Francisco?
Well, in Oakland we work with a group called Youth Hub Oakland. So there's like 20 different youth-based businesses out of which we will pick 2 or 3. There's multiple entrepreneurship kinds of things, but there's not capital that's ready for before a business loan, and these are not things that they're going to have a big exit. So you don't want to use true equity and venture capital. So you have to find all those, and sometimes the schools are okay with that. It's not, we're not particularly good at it. You know, the folks who are around economic justice have gotten to jobs and realize jobs don't get you there. They don't get you careers. These people don't, you know, the realization that entrepreneurship is the path to wealth for marginalized who don't get seen or chosen is rippling through, but it hasn't really, the schools are kind of a lagging group there, you know. And then when they want to talk entrepreneurship, they think it's coding and it's venture backed and you go to the moon. A lot of these things, they just want to go to the next block, or they want to go from the kitchen to a storefront, you know. These are, you know, sole proprietors that, you know, in 2 or 3 years might have 3 employees, you know, that kind of thing.
How do you connect with other platforms? You spoke about Kiva.
Yeah, so, well, Kiva is an interesting, we are both Kiva. Do you guys know what Kiva is? So it's crowdfunding $25 loans, and now Kiva Zip in the US has the similar kind of thing. So in Oakland, they've done, I think, 120 loans, and 87 of them are with African Americans. And so we will look at some of those folks for being the next phase of those Kiva graduates. Other times, Kiva will be the senior lender, and they might refinance our loan when they're ready to start paying. But they will then take out our loan, and the thing with Kiva is it's a 0 interest. So we're working with them on both on front ends and back ends around those kinds of things. So it's we think it's a really replicable kind of model. And what we're also finding is that all the folks who are working on this kind of issue, we work at a level below where they work. So we don't threaten any of the existing platforms. We're just a module on their platforms, or we're just a junior soccer league and they're a higher soccer league. Our goal is to graduate into some of these other programs that can take business loans when you have a track record. But we're that startup capital that, you know, if you have a rich uncle, you wouldn't need us. So, you know, if you have a rich uncle, don't apply. We're not going to check your family tree, but that's not who we're for. Okay, thank you.